Albert Einstein was born on a quiet morning in the spring of 1879 in the small city of Ulm in southern Germany. There was nothing unusual about the day. No crowds gathered, no bells rang, no one paused to take notice. The streets outside moved slowly, as they always did. People walked to work, shop doors opened, morning light settled gently on stone buildings and narrow roads. Inside a modest home, a child entered the world quietly. Albert was not born into wealth or ceremony. His family lived simply like many others around them. Life followed a predictable rhythm: meals, work, rest, and sleep, repeated day after day. His parents, Hermann and Pauline, were practical people. They cared about stability. They valued calm and order. They did not imagine greatness or fame. They hoped only for a peaceful life. From his earliest days, Albert was a quiet child. He did not cry excessively. He did not demand attention. He spent long moments simply looking at light, at movement, at the shapes around him. As he grew older, his quietness became more noticeable. Albert spoke later than other children. When he did speak, his words came slowly. He often paused, as though considering each thought carefully before letting it go. Some adults worried, others watched patiently. Albert himself did not seem troubled. He was content to sit alone, to observe, to wait. His mind moved at its own pace, unhurried and inward. The Einstein household was orderly but not strict. Meals were eaten together. Evenings were calm. Conversation was gentle and unforced. Pauline, his mother, loved music. She often played the piano, filling the home with soft melodies that drifted through the rooms. Albert listened. He did not clap or react strongly. He absorbed the sound quietly, letting it settle. Music, even then, was not something exciting to him. It was something steady, something grounding. When Albert was still young, the family moved to Munich. The city was larger, busier, more structured. Even there, Albert remained the same. He did not rush to fit in. He did not compete for attention. He preferred quiet corners, solitary moments, and slow observation. School was not immediately comfortable for him. Classrooms were noisy, lessons moved quickly, questions were expected to be answered without hesitation. Albert hesitated. He did not enjoy repeating information. He did not enjoy rigid rules that allowed little room for thought. But when left alone, something gentle and steady emerged. He could sit with a problem for long stretches of time. He did not grow frustrated. He did not demand resolution. He simply stayed with the question. At home, Albert found comfort in stillness. He liked sitting near windows, watching the light change, observing people pass by without needing to interact. Time did not press on him the way it did on others. Minutes stretched, hours softened. This unhurried relationship with time would remain with him throughout his life. One small moment from his childhood would quietly shape the way he thought forever. When Albert was given a simple compass, he became absorbed by it. He held it carefully, turned it slowly, watched the needle move. No matter how he rotated the compass, the needle always returned to its direction. There was something calming about this consistency. Something invisible was guiding it, something steady and reliable. Albert did not rush to explain it. He did not demand answers. He wondered, and then he wondered again. This gentle curiosity, quiet, patient, persistent, would become one of the defining features of his life. As Albert grew, his quiet nature remained unchanged. He was not disruptive. He was not rebellious. He simply existed at a slower pace. Teachers sometimes misunderstood him. They mistook his silence for lack of ability, his pauses for confusion. But Albert was not confused. He was thinking. While others hurried from one idea to the next, Albert stayed. He allowed thoughts to unfold slowly, like clouds drifting across a wide sky. At home, there was no pressure to perform. His parents did not push him to compete. They did not measure him against others. They allowed him space. This space, physical and mental, gave Albert something rare. It gave him permission to be unhurried. Even as a child, Albert was not drawn to excitement. Loud games did not interest him. Large groups drained him. He preferred quiet activities, reading, observing, listening. He enjoyed routine, breakfast at the same time, walking the same streets, returning to familiar places. Predictability comforted him. There was safety in repetition. This preference would later shape the way he lived his adult life. Simple meals, similar clothes, familiar paths, walked again and again. But for now, it showed itself in small, ordinary ways. Albert was never in a hurry to grow up. He did not rush toward adulthood. He did not chase recognition. He was content to be where he was, thinking slowly, observing quietly, and letting the world move at its own pace around him. The early years of Albert Einstein's life were not filled with excitement or drama. They were filled with calm, with routine, with gentle curiosity. There were no great achievements yet, no discoveries, no attention from the outside world. And that was perfectly fine, because the foundation of his life, the quiet, the patience, the comfort with solitude, was already firmly in place. It was in this stillness that his way of thinking began, not loudly, not urgently. As Albert Einstein grew older, his quiet nature did not fade. It settled more deeply into him, becoming part of how he moved through the world. While other children rushed from one activity to another, Albert lingered. He lingered over thoughts. He lingered over questions. He lingered over moments that others barely noticed. There was no urgency in him. When something caught his attention, he stayed with it gently, allowing curiosity to unfold at its own pace. This was not a restless curiosity. It was not loud or demanding. It was calm, patient, almost meditative. School continued to be a place of contrast for Albert. The classrooms were structured, lessons followed strict patterns. Questions were expected to be answered quickly and confidently. Albert did not respond well to this rhythm. When asked a question, he often paused, not because he did not know the answer, but because he was still thinking. Teachers sometimes mistook this pause for hesitation or confusion. They expected speed. Albert offered depth. He did not enjoy repeating information without understanding it. He wanted to know why something was true, not simply that it was true. This desire to understand quietly separated him from many of his peers. But Albert did not feel isolated by it. He was comfortable with his own company. Outside the classroom, Albert found freedom. He liked to walk alone, to sit quietly with books, to think without interruption. He was especially drawn to simple objects, mechanical toys, basic tools, anything that hinted at hidden order beneath the surface. He could spend long periods examining how something worked, not taking it apart in haste, but studying it patiently. If he did not understand something immediately, he did not grow frustrated. He waited. He trusted that understanding would arrive in time. One of the defining qualities of Albert's mind was its willingness to wander, not in a chaotic way, but in a slow, meandering way. He allowed thoughts to drift from one idea to another, often circling back, approaching the same question from different angles. This wandering was not aimless. It was gentle exploration. He did not force his mind forward. He let it move naturally. This approach would later shape the way he thought about the universe, but at this stage, it simply made him different. Albert's love for solitude deepened during these years. Solitude was not loneliness for him, it was comfort. In quiet moments, his mind felt at ease. There were no expectations, no interruptions, just space. In this space, ideas had room to breathe. He could imagine scenarios. He could follow thoughts without needing to explain them to anyone else. This inner world became a place of refuge. Music also became more important during this time. Albert began learning the violin, encouraged gently by his mother. At first, he approached it without enthusiasm. Practice felt repetitive, uninspiring, but gradually something changed. As he learned to move slowly through melodies, he discovered a rhythm that suited him. Music did not demand answers. It did not rush him. It allowed pauses. It allowed silence between notes. Albert began to appreciate these spaces. Playing the violin became less about performance and more about feeling. Each note existed for its own sake. There was no need to hurry. At school, Albert continued to struggle with rigid expectations. He questioned authority, not loudly, but quietly. When rules seemed arbitrary, he wondered about their purpose. When lessons felt disconnected from understanding, he withdrew. This did not make him rebellious. It made him inward. He was not trying to challenge the system. He was trying to find meaning within it. When meaning was absent, he retreated into thought. During his teenage years, Albert spent more time reading on his own. He gravitated toward books that allowed reflection, scientific writings, philosophical ideas, simple explanations of natural phenomena. He did not skim, he read slowly. Often, he would pause after a sentence, thinking about it, imagining its implications. Reading was not about finishing the book. It was about sitting with ideas. This slow reading style mirrored the way he lived. There were moments of difficulty. Albert did not always feel understood. He did not always feel comfortable in structured environments. But these challenges did not push him toward conflict. They pushed him inward. Instead of reacting outwardly, he refined his inner world. He learned to rely on his own sense of calm, his own rhythm. This self-reliance became a quiet strength. As he moved closer to adulthood, Albert's mind continued to wander gently. He imagined riding alongside beams of light. He imagined clocks ticking at different speeds. These ideas were not formed suddenly. They emerged slowly, often during quiet moments of reflection. He did not sit down with the intention to invent something new. He allowed questions to arise naturally. What would it feel like to move with light? How does time behave when movement changes? These questions were not urgent. They were simply interesting. Albert held them softly. What made Albert's wandering mind special was not its speed or intensity. It was its patience. He did not need immediate answers. He trusted that understanding could take time. Days, months, years. This patience allowed him to explore ideas deeply, without pressure. As this chapter of his life unfolded, Albert remained largely unnoticed by the wider world. There were no awards, no recognition, and he did not seek them. He continued to live quietly, thinking slowly, allowing his mind to move at its own pace. This slow wandering, this gentle curiosity, would later lead to ideas that reshaped how we understand the universe. But for now, it simply shaped a young man who was comfortable with silence, with patience, and with the steady rhythm of thought. Albert Einstein's mind did not race. It found its way. It wandered. As Albert Einstein moved into adulthood, walking became one of the most steady and reliable parts of his life. It was not something he planned carefully. It was not something he scheduled. It simply became a habit. A quiet habit, woven gently into his days. Albert walked slowly, never in a hurry, often alone. His steps were measured and relaxed, as if each one existed only for itself. Walking was not an escape for him. It was not a way to avoid work. It was part of how he thought. When Albert walked, his mind loosened. Thoughts were no longer required to line up neatly. They did not need to reach conclusions. They drifted. Sometimes a single idea would stay with him for a long time. Sometimes it would come and go without leaving a trace. Albert welcomed both. He did not force direction. He did not demand progress. He allowed his mind to move as freely as his body. Many of Albert's walks took place in familiar surroundings. Tree-lined paths, quiet streets, riverbanks, gentle hills. These places were not chosen for beauty or excitement. They were chosen for calm. Familiarity allowed his attention to soften. He did not need to watch where he was going. His feet knew the way. This familiarity gave his mind permission to wander. As he walked, Albert often placed his hands behind his back. His gaze rested softly ahead, or sometimes downward, taking in the ground beneath him. There was no dramatic posture, no sense of performance. Walking was private, a conversation with himself. Albert did not listen to music while walking. He did not distract himself. Silence accompanied him. In that silence, ideas could rise gently to the surface. Sometimes he replayed questions he had been considering earlier in the day. Sometimes new ones appeared. He did not judge them. He did not rush to test them. He simply let them exist. There were days when his walks felt uneventful. No new ideas, no insights. These days did not bother him. He understood that thinking did not always produce visible results. Sometimes the value was simply in the rhythm, the repetition, the steadiness. Walking grounded him. Albert believed that movement helped thought flow more naturally. Sitting too long made ideas feel heavy, stagnant. Walking loosened them. Each step created a subtle rhythm, and within that rhythm, his thoughts found space. He did not walk far or fast. The distance mattered less than the process. Over time, walking became inseparable from Albert's thinking life. If a problem felt tangled, he walked. If a question felt unclear, he walked. If his mind felt crowded, he walked. Walking did not promise answers. It offered clarity. And clarity for Albert was enough. Some of his most famous ideas were shaped during these quiet walks. Not fully formed, not complete, just gentle beginnings. A thought might arrive halfway through, it might stay only briefly. Albert did not grab at it. He trusted that if it mattered, it would return. He often walked at the same time each day. Morning walks were especially important. The air felt different then. Cooler, cleaner. The world moved more slowly. These walks set the tone for the day. They eased him into thinking without pressure. Albert's walking habit also reflected his broader approach to life. He preferred steady movement to sudden change. He believed that progress did not need to be loud or fast. It could be quiet, incremental, unnoticed. Even when his work grew more complex, even when recognition began to arrive, his walking did not change. He did not replace it with meetings or social obligations. He protected this time. It was essential. Walking also gave Albert a sense of connection to the world around him. Not a dramatic connection, but a quiet awareness. The sound of footsteps on stone, the movement of leaves in the wind, the way light shifted as the day passed. These details grounded him in the present moment. They reminded him that thinking did not happen in isolation. It happened within the flow of life. Albert did not analyze his walking habit. He did not write about it extensively. He simply lived it. To him, walking was as natural as breathing, a simple, reliable companion. There were moments when Albert walked with others, colleagues, friends. Even then, the pace remained slow. Conversation was unhurried. Silences were allowed. He did not feel the need to fill every moment with words. He understood the value of quiet companionship. As years passed, walking continued to shape Albert's days. It offered continuity. No matter where he lived and no matter what work occupied him, walking remained a steady thread through his life. Albert Einstein did not separate thinking from living. For him, thinking happened while walking, while breathing, while existing. There was no boundary. Walking was thinking, and thinking was simply part of being alive. As this chapter of his life unfolds, Albert continues to move forward, one slow step at a time, not chasing answers, not forcing conclusions, just walking and allowing thought to follow gently behind. Albert Einstein's life was not organized around excitement. It was organized around routine. He found comfort in repetition, in familiar patterns, in days that unfolded in predictable ways. This was not because he lacked imagination, it was because routine gave his mind freedom. When daily life required fewer decisions, his thoughts could move more gently. Albert believed that simplicity reduced noise. Too many choices, too many possessions, too many interruptions created distraction. He preferred to keep life quiet. This preference shaped the way he lived, day after day, year after year. Mornings often began the same way. Albert would wake without urgency. He did not rush from bed. There was time. Light filtered slowly into the room. The sounds of the outside world arrived gently. He washed, dressed, and prepared himself without haste. His clothing rarely changed in style. He wore similar outfits repeatedly, simple suits, comfortable fabrics. This was not neglect, it was intention. By removing small decisions, he preserved energy for thinking. Breakfast was modest. There were no elaborate meals, no ceremony, just nourishment. He ate slowly, sometimes lost in thought, sometimes simply present. He did not read newspapers obsessively. He did not fill the morning with noise. Quiet was welcome. After breakfast, walking often followed. This was part of the routine, as natural as breathing. The path was familiar, the pace unhurried. Walking connected the morning to the day ahead. It allowed thoughts to surface gently, without pressure. Albert's workday followed a steady rhythm. Whether he was working in a patent office or later in academic settings, his approach remained similar. He did not jump between tasks. He focused on one thing at a time. When concentration faded, he paused. He did not force productivity. He trusted that clarity would return. He preferred long stretches of quiet work. Interruptions unsettled him. Meetings, crowds, social obligations were tiring. He participated when necessary, but he did not seek them out. Solitude restored him. Lunch was simple, often the same foods, prepared without fuss. Albert did not attach meaning to meals. They were part of the routine, not a highlight. Eating was functional. Afternoons were often devoted to thought rather than action. Reading, writing, sitting quietly with ideas. Albert did not believe that effort always looked busy. Sometimes effort looked like stillness. Sometimes it looked like staring out a window. When frustration appeared, Albert did not react strongly. He stepped away. He walked. He allowed space between himself and the problem. This space softened difficulty. Evenings were calm. Albert did not seek entertainment. He did not crave stimulation. Often music filled the quiet. The violin rested nearby. Playing was
No
slow,
audience,
gentle.
Music
There
was
was
a
no
form of
performance.
rest.
Dinner followed a similar simplicity. No rush, no extravagance. Conversation, when present, was quiet. Silence was never uncomfortable. As night arrived, Albert's pace slowed further. He did not work late into the night. He respected rest. Sleep was important to him. It was not wasted time. It was renewal. These routines repeated day after day. They may appear unremarkable, but within this simplicity, Albert found stability. And within stability, his thoughts found freedom. As his reputation grew, many aspects of his life changed, but his routines remained. He did not adopt extravagance. He did not alter his habits for status. Fame did not tempt him to complicate life. He protected simplicity. Albert understood something quietly important, that a calm life supports a calm mind, and a calm mind sees more clearly. His routines were not rigid rules, they were gentle guides. If something changed, he adapted without distress. But he always returned to simplicity. Albert Einstein's daily life was not dramatic. It did not need to be. Its strength lay in its steadiness, in its quiet repetition, in its refusal to rush. And within these ordinary days, extraordinary thoughts were allowed to emerge, slowly, naturally, without force. Albert Einstein did not rush toward his work. He did not chase recognition. He did not hurry to be seen. For a long time, his work unfolded quietly, almost unnoticed. This suited him. Albert believed that good thinking needed space, and space could not exist where urgency ruled. In his early adult years, Albert found himself working in a patent office. It was not a place of excitement. It was not a place of prestige. The work was steady, predictable, calm. Each day followed a similar pattern. Applications arrived. Documents were reviewed. Decisions were made carefully and methodically. The pace was slow enough that Albert's mind did not feel crowded. Some might have felt confined by such work. Albert did not. He appreciated its rhythm. The predictability of the patent office gave him something valuable. Evenings remained free. There were no pressing demands after work hours, no emergencies. Time stretched open before him. Albert approached his official duties with care. He read attentively. He evaluated patiently. He did not rush to conclusions. This habit mirrored his inner life. Work, for Albert, was not something to conquer. It was something to move through gently. After leaving the office each day, Albert returned to his quiet routines, walking, thinking, sitting with ideas. His most important work did not happen under pressure. It happened in stillness. Albert often thought best when there was no expectation to produce results. When nothing was demanded of him, his mind felt free to wander. This freedom was essential. Ideas arrived slowly, often when he was not actively seeking them. He did not sit down and declare, "I will discover something new today." Instead, he sat with questions. He allowed them to remain unanswered. He trusted that clarity would come in its own time. Albert worked on ideas quietly, often returning to the same thoughts again and again. He did not become frustrated by repetition. Revisiting ideas felt natural. Each return revealed something slightly different. When progress slowed, Albert did not push harder. He stepped away. He walked. He played music. He allowed distance to soften difficulty. This approach stood in contrast to the urgency of the world around him. Many sought rapid success, quick solutions. Albert did not. He valued depth over speed. Even after his ideas began to attract attention, Albert resisted pressure. Recognition did not change his working style. He did not increase his pace. He did not allow external expectations to dictate his rhythm. Albert believed that urgency distorted thought. When rushed, ideas became shallow. When hurried, clarity faded. He chose patience instead. His work often progressed in small steps. A thought here, a question there. Nothing dramatic. But over time, these small steps accumulated. Albert wrote slowly. He revised carefully. He was not concerned with perfection. He was concerned with understanding. Sometimes his ideas were misunderstood. Sometimes they were ignored. Albert did not react strongly. He was accustomed to waiting. He trusted his process. It had served him well. Even later in life, when his work was widely known, Albert maintained this calm approach. He declined opportunities that disrupted his rhythm. He avoided unnecessary obligations. He protected his time. Work for Albert Einstein was never a race. It was a quiet exploration, one that unfolded at its own pace. There were moments of satisfaction, but they were quiet moments. A sense of clarity, a feeling of alignment. These were enough. Albert did not measure success by recognition. He measured it by inner calm, by whether his work felt honest. As years passed, his work continued without urgency. He remained patient. He remained steady. Albert Einstein's way of working was as gentle as the rest of his life. It did not shout. It did not hurry. It simply continued, and within this calm persistence, ideas found the time they needed to grow. Albert Einstein's days were not filled only with thinking. They were also shaped by quiet moments of rest. Moments where nothing needed to be solved, nothing needed to be understood. These moments mattered to him. Music was one of Albert's companions. Not loud music, not music meant to impress, but gentle, familiar melodies. He often turned to his violin. It was not played for performance, it was played for comfort. Albert held the violin easily, without tension. He did not rush through pieces. He allowed notes to linger. Sound filled the room softly, never demanding attention. Music helped Albert slow his thoughts. It gave his mind something gentle to rest upon. When words became too precise, music allowed him to loosen his grip. He did not analyze the music deeply. He did not search for meaning. He simply listened, and listened again. Often Albert played the same passages repeatedly. Repetition did not bore him, it soothed him. Each repetition brought subtle changes in feeling. Sometimes he paused mid-piece. The violin rested quietly in his hands. Silence followed. This silence was not empty. It was full. Albert valued silence deeply. Silence was not absence. It was presence without distraction. In silence, his thoughts softened. They became less sharp, less demanding. Albert often sat quietly after playing music. He did not immediately return to work. He allowed the calm to remain. These moments of rest were not wasted time. They were necessary. Albert understood that rest nourished thought. Sleep, too, was important to him. He maintained simple sleep habits. He did not stay awake chasing ideas. He trusted that rest would return clarity later. When thoughts persisted at night, he did not fight them. He let them pass slowly, like clouds drifting across a quiet sky. Albert believed that forcing the mind was unhelpful. Gentleness worked better. During periods of deep focus, he still paused regularly. He stepped away from his desk. He looked out windows. He watched light change across walls. These small pauses grounded him. They reminded him that time moved steadily, whether or not he was thinking. Albert did not separate rest from work. They flowed together. Each supported the other. Music returned him to balance. Silence restored his energy. Even in later years, when visitors filled his days, Albert protected his quiet evenings. He declined noise when possible. He chose stillness. He believed that a calm mind was not something achieved once. It was something maintained, gently. There was no struggle in this maintenance, only attention. Albert's evenings often ended quietly. A simple meal, a few pages of reading, soft lamplight. He did not review the day intensely. He did not plan excessively. He trusted tomorrow to arrive naturally. As night settled, Albert allowed his thoughts to fade. Nothing needed to be completed. Nothing needed to be proven. In these quiet moments, his mind rested. And in resting, it prepared itself quietly for another day. Albert Einstein's life was not shaped by grand moments alone. Most of it was made of ordinary days, days that passed quietly, without ceremony. These days mattered to him. Albert did not seek excitement in daily life. He preferred consistency, familiar paths, familiar rooms, the comfort of knowing what the day would bring. Mornings followed simple patterns. He woke without hurry. There was no alarm that demanded attention. The day unfolded naturally. Breakfast was modest, nothing elaborate, simple foods. He ate slowly, not thinking deeply, just being present. After breakfast, Albert often prepared for his walk. Walking was not exercise, it was reflection. He walked familiar routes, paths he knew well, trees he had passed many times before. The repetition was calming. As he walked, his thoughts wandered. Not sharply, not urgently. They drifted. Albert noticed small details, light filtering through leaves, footsteps on gravel, the quiet rhythm of movement. These details anchored him. They kept his thoughts gentle. During these walks, Albert was not solving problems. He was allowing space. Returning home, he settled into his work gently. There was no rush to begin. Ideas waited patiently. Midday meals were simple, often shared quietly. Conversation was calm, no debates, no urgency. Albert valued companionship, but not noise. He preferred listening, observing, letting others speak freely. Afternoons passed steadily. Work, rest, a short walk. Nothing dramatic happened, and that was enough. Albert found joy in small things. A letter from a friend, a familiar melody, the warmth of sunlight through a window. These joys did not demand excitement. They settled quietly. Evenings were peaceful. He did not seek entertainment. He preferred stillness. Reading was slow. He did not read many pages at once. He allowed words to linger. Sometimes he read the same lines again, not out of confusion, out of comfort. Albert did not fill his days to feel productive. He allowed emptiness, space. He believed that life did not need to be full to be meaningful. Visitors sometimes expected brilliance, grand conversations. Albert offered calm instead. He spoke simply, listened carefully. He did not impress intentionally. People often remembered his gentleness, his patience. Albert's ordinary days built a life of quiet depth, not marked by noise, but by steadiness. As years passed, his routines changed little. The world shifted around him, but he remained calm. Albert understood that joy could be quiet, that fulfillment could be gentle. There was no need to seek more. What he had was enough. And so, day after day, his life continued, unremarkable in appearance, rich in stillness. As Albert Einstein grew older, his life became even quieter, not smaller, just softer. The noise of the world continued around him, but it rarely reached his inner space. He lived simply. His surroundings were modest. There was no need for excess. Everything he required was already present. Albert's appearance changed with time. His hair grew thinner, then lighter. His movements slowed, but his manner remained gentle. He did not resist aging. He accepted it calmly. Each stage of life arrived in its own way. His days followed familiar rhythms. Waking, eating, walking, resting. Nothing dramatic marked the passage of time. And that was comforting. Albert continued to think, but without urgency. Ideas still came, but they were no longer chased. He allowed curiosity to remain playful. He did not force conclusions. He let questions remain open. Visitors still came, some with excitement, some with expectations. Albert greeted them kindly, but he did not change for them. He spoke slowly, paused often, listened carefully. If conversations grew intense, he gently redirected them toward calm, toward simplicity. Albert believed that tension clouded understanding. Calm clarified it. In his later years, he spent more time resting, sitting quietly, watching light move across a room. He found comfort in repetition, familiar chairs, familiar views. He walked less distance, but still walked. Even short walks mattered. Albert noticed the same small details. Leaves shifting in wind, footsteps echoing softly. Nothing was too ordinary to observe. He continued to enjoy music, sometimes listening, sometimes playing briefly. Music still softened his thoughts, still brought balance. Silence followed music naturally. and he welcomed it. Albert did not fear silence. He trusted it. As time passed, he reflected less on achievement, more on contentment. He did not measure his life by recognition. He measured it by peace. There were moments of memory, childhood walks, quiet evenings, thoughts long explored. He did not cling to the past. He acknowledged it gently. Albert understood that life did not need to be fully understood, only experienced. He believed wonder was more important than answers. As his energy faded, he rested more often, without frustration. Rest was not an interruption, it was a continuation. Albert allowed his days to shorten. He did not resist the slowing pace. The world outside continued, but his focus narrowed inward, toward quiet acceptance. In his final years, his life remained calm, uncomplicated. There were no dramatic conclusions, no grand endings, only a gentle continuation. Albert Einstein lived as he had always lived, thoughtful, quiet, unhurried. His life was not defined by noise, but by stillness, and in that stillness he found meaning. As this story comes to a close, there is nothing more to explain, nothing more to resolve. The quiet life of Albert Einstein settles softly into silence. You don't need to hold on to the details. You don't need to remember the timeline. You can simply rest, let the story fade, let the words slow, and allow the calm to remain with you.